Hey there, welcome back to the Miguel Show with me, Miguel. Today we're bringing back the Katekyo Hitman Reborn review series, talk about its third major arc, the Varia arc. The Varia arc, at least in my opinion, seems to probably be the most popular arc from the series, or at the very least the most remarkable, as most of the iconography of this arc and its characters are what's used for the official media for the series to this very day, such as variations of the Varia arc's poster being used to promote the anime on various streaming services such as Hulu, and many of the figures made for Suna being based on the clothes he wears during the final battle of this arc. Also, a unique promotional video that was released during the writing of this video has a good portion of its minute-long runtime dedicated to recreating the fights from this part of the series. But regardless of that, is the Varia arc a good step forward after our first foray into battle shonen storytelling with the Katekyo gang arc? Well, let's see as we get into the beginning of the story.
What's the next stage?
Our story for this arc starts off with this kid named Basil getting the brakes beaten off him by this guy named Squallow. He's looking for the specific set of rings. Obviously, our main cast gets involved with Squallow beating each of them within an inch of their lives, only being saved with the Dino appearing at the nick of time. These rings that the Squallow guy was looking for are the indicators to the current figureheads of Mongola Familia, and his most elite supporters, known as Guardians. There are 7 in the set, each one representing a different weather phenomenon. Who these rings go to is decided by 2 people. The first of which is the head of the Mongola Familia, the second person is the head of Sedef, which is the outside advisor of the Mongola Familia. The current head of Sedef is Imetsu Sawada, who's Suna's dad, who's basically a deadbeat. Like, bro legit left for work and made his wife tell his son that he disappeared. Free Suna, man. But anyway, when the leaders of the Mongola and Sedef don't agree on who the new leader of the Mongola should be, they initiate the Battle of the Rings, a battle where both groups get half of each Mongola ring and have to fight the person with the same ring as them from the other group to probably become one of the 6 Guardians, alongside becoming the boss himself. On Imetsu's side, you got Suna the gang, while on the Mongola 9th side, you got the organization that Squallow belonged to, known as the Varia, an elite assassination team led by the son of the Mongola 9th, Xanxus, which creates a really good start to the arc and its stakes. It also creates some intrigue as you wonder why would Suna ever chosen to be a candidate for a Mongola boss, if a guy like Xanxus exists, who would probably fit the role better. You also get to meet people like Suna's dad, who while he sucks, adds a lot more to the world of the series through his organization he leads existence in the plot. But let's get into the titular Fight for the Rings, and how it affects each character involved in them. The Sun Guardian on the Mongola side is Ryohei Sasagawa, coming back after getting watched by Mukuro's homie in the last arc, training with Colonello, a character who we have met before, but I failed to mention because, well, he wasn't too important. Anyway, he's another person similar to Reborn that's an efficient hitman who looks like a baby, otherwise known as an arcobaleno. This will be significantly more important in the next video. But anyway, Colonello and Ryohei actually have a decent dynamic here. Ryohei continually pushing himself to the limits mentality, being matched to Colonello's drill sergeant-like personality, making for a lot of fun between the two of them. It also puts the aforementioned personality trait of Ryohei to the test, as his training is to finally just rest to make his body stronger, literally learning how to shatter mountains just because he decided to take a rest instead of just training. They even get some depth to Ryohei's relationship with his sister Kyoko, with a scar that he got on his face is from a fight that involved him saving his sister, causing her to not to want him to fight anymore out of guilt, feeling like she's the reason for him to gain the scar. This caused Ryohei to be even better at fighting though, so that she won't have to worry about him anymore. A resolve that literally helps him to win the fight here. Like, it's not deep or anything, but it's rather wholesome and fittingly simple for a guy like Ryohei. Even the arena where the fight happens is pretty interesting, with a boxing ring full of high-intensity light to represent the sun, even blinding Ryohei for a while until he punches the enemy so hard the spotlight's creating light gets broken. Yeah, Ryohei is really cool. The only issue with this section of the story is that the member of the Varia Ryohei fights, Lashuria, kinda sucks. Like, it's cool that he's a Muay Thai boxer to parallel Ryohei's just being a normal boxer, but his personality is where the issue comes in, where he's just some weird gay stereotype, seemingly making very weird remarks towards Ryohei as he beats him up. Which, while it fits with his name being Lashuria based on the 7 deadly sin of lust, which is a theme all the Varia members fall into to some degree, it just makes him weird to watch. Especially since the oldest Ryohei could be is 15, and Lashuria is 100% a grown man. Ryohei and the rest of Mongola fall into the opposite of the sins, that is the 7 heavenly virtues, with his being chastity, which deals with him being in control himself, which fits with him practicing rest as a way to strengthen his abilities in this arc. Which all the Mongola fit into this theme as well, but hey, we'll take it where we can. This is an okay first fight. Let's get into the next one. The Lightning Guardian on the Mongola side is Lambo. I'm suffering. We don't get to see his training because he doesn't train at all. So most of the arc is actually focused around Suna, because, well, as expected, he's very apprehensive about the whole thing. Like, yeah, sure, he had decided to grow a pair during the Kokyo arc, but that was supposed to be a one-time deal, so he isn't a fan of being put into a similar situation like that, probably not even a month later. Especially with all the weirdness of his father deciding to be present in his life now, and all of his friends being forcibly dragged into this battle. With Lambo being the most obvious point of concern because despite being annoying, he is also a 5-year-old who's about to be put into a death match against a trained assassin, so yeah. He can't even catch a break with the Lambo from 10 years later potentially helping him. As well, he wants nothing to do with the match and gives Suna a random pair of horns that Suna's dad gave him alongside the ring. He also brings up some weird thing about him having no knowledge of the battle at all, and he could be from a future that's not exactly the future of this world. That'll also be something much more important in the next video. But hey, the battle in this weird electric field begins, and predictably, he isn't doing too well. Even his never before mentioned ability to conduct electricity well with his skin isn't helping him out. He then obviously tries his 10-year later version, but he also isn't very effective. This causes him to use the 10-year bazooka again and become 20-year-old Lambo. A version of Lambo that's fully mature and can use his lightning powers to the fullest. This will also be the only time we'll ever see him, and he basically does nothing. Yeah, this isn't exactly the greatest fight, if I'm being honest. Until we turn back to Suna, who's about to watch a grown man kill a 5-year-old, deciding to, despite it possibly messing up his chances at winning the battle at the rings, to disrupt the match. An action that gets the attention of Xanthus, who smiles for the first time in 8 years apparently. A scene that does a good job of truly portraying the dichotomy between the two bosses. As if Lambo was on Xanthus' side, he would have let him die without a second thought, his men being worthless to him unless they allow him to become the boss. This also shows how vindictive Xanthus is. As well, if Xanthus did what Suna did, Suna would have ended the battle. But Xanthus, despite already winning basically because Suna had to give up his ring because of interfering with the match, decides to let the battle go on, just so that he could watch the Vongola side suffer even more. This stirs a great fear in Suna, to the point where he considers if saving Lambo was the right thing to do, now he effectively threw away the whole game. But Reborn reassures him the Vongola don't need someone who would let their men die like that, giving Suna the true motivation that he finally needs to put his head in the game and become stronger to defeat Xanthus. Oh yeah, there's also the guy Lambo fought named Leviathan on the Varia side. He represents envy, being desperate for Xanthus' approval. It's pretty lame outside of showing again how much Xanthus does not care about his men, with him telling Bro to kill himself if he ever falters in battle. Even Mukuro didn't view his allies as that disposable, and he treated them like toys. Yeah, this isn't the best part of the story outside of the Suna and Xanthus' part. But hey, we can only go up from here, and we do with the next fight. We went from a bum of the series to one of the goats of the series, as this fight focuses on Gokudera Hayato, who was trained by Shamel, the weird horny doctor guy from the first arc. But he's actually kind of good here, as it's revealed that he was Gokudera's mentor in the past, being the one to show him the dynamite technique that he uses, up until a certain point, where it was obvious that Gokudera lacked the ability to value his own life, seeing the very rash way he would use his dynamite at a cost to himself as long as he could win a fight. Something that Shamel just can't agree with, since due to his lifestyle being a degenerate, the idea of being so willing to put your own life on the line so casually makes no sense to him. But Gokudera is able to learn this lesson so that he can improve his dynamite technique, or at least a version of it, in time for the next match. But anyway, Gokudera comes in with a pretty killer outfit for the fight and is ready to fight Belphegor in a timed match with explosive wind generators ready to blow both of them sky high once the time runs out. Thus the match begins properly, and it's really good, showing off a lot of those strengths of the writing style Mano uses with the fights, as most of the fights are less focused on choreography as much as these very specific moments that turn the battle in either opponent's favor, which in a battle between two supposed strategist characters shines pretty well. But seeing how Gokudera continually has to figure out how Belphegor's knives to be able to attack him from every angle works, and then seeing Bro be able to overcome them and use this new rocket bomb technique is really entertaining to read. Also, shout out to Belphegor for being one of the better members of the Varia. I like his whole kid desensitized to murder personality, alongside his whole being an actual prince thing. It's just kind of fun. Also, this shows one of the best utilizations of the sin and virtue symbolism, as Belphegor represents sloth, mostly treating the battle as a game and relying on basically dumb luck in order for his whole knives carried by strings plan to work. Like, he literally doesn't even move from his side of the field until Gokudera finally lands a hit on him, and he starts to take things seriously. Gokudera even falls into the opposite of sloth, that being diligence, really well, as seen by the end of the battle. As after blowing up Belphegor in another press to show skill, Gokudera goes to grab the other Storm Ring and win the match before the time goes out. But Belphegor, not to be defeated, grabs his ring at the same time, causing a struggle between the two as the bomb comes closer and closer to the enemy, with Shamal telling Gokudera to just throw the match, as he'll die at the rate he's going. While fitting with his virtue of diligence, and well, his just general personality in the previous arc, he's going to fulfill this mission, even at the risk to himself. Seeing the previously established lesson taught to him by Shamal of valuing his own life to being applicable to giving up when it matters most, which is especially bad here as well. The person he's trying to get that up for is Suna, the person that made him feel like he even had a life worth valuing in the first place. But Suna obviously doesn't want this, for the first time yelling at him by saying how the reason that they're fighting is not to become Vongola members, but to have a normal life again. I left that to Suna wouldn't be the same without Gokudera. Causing Gokudera, against his better judgment, to throw the match and let Belphegor win, an action that he regrets as well. He feels like it's another thing betraying the eventual goal of becoming a Vongola member. But as long as Suna's happy with it, he'll probably eventually get over it. Yeah, this is a pretty good fight in my opinion. Other than the fact that like Gokudera is like just one of the better written characters in the series overall, and probably my favorite character if I'm being honest with myself. It also just shows what makes him so great, such as his undying willingness to help out Suna, how that's both a benefit and a downfall of his. With that moment where he finally gives up the match being one of the most impactful moments, not only in this arc, but I feel like the entire series in general. But anyway, Vongola still got 3 losses, man, so hopefully we can get a win in the next round. Of course, my boy Yamamoto is going to be the one to turn this whole thing around and produce what I think is another contender for the best fight in this arc. Yamamoto, in preparation for his battle, is trained by his dad, a character that we haven't before, but wasn't too important until now, where he apparently used to be a swordsman in the past, trained with a unique fighting style known as the Shigure Soen Ryu, which he passes on to Yamamoto. Too bad for Yamamoto, his opponent is Squallow, the guy I talked about earlier in the video, who has beaten 100 sword styles before, so yeah, he's kind of screwed. But there is something deeply important that his dad tells him when he tries to suggest learning another style, that being that the Shigure Soen Ryu is flawless and unbeatable, a belief that shapes the entirety of his and Squallow's battle, as Squallow, due to him representing the sin of pride, looks down on Yamamoto as an utter amateur, especially once he learns that bro uses the Shigure Soen Ryu, which is one of the 100 styles that he's overcame before. The idea that he could perfectly understand Yamamoto and his style is what eventually becomes its undoing once the secret of the style is introduced, that being it's an ever-evolving and evolving sword style, because every user develops their own unique stance that they personally pass down to the person they teach the style to, alongside the previous styles that they learned. This means every Shigure Soen Ryu user is never the same. Yamamoto and his dad being no different, as the 8th style that Yamamoto learned is entirely different than the 8th style that Squallow thinks he has, because his dad developed his own 8th style. And in this fight, Yamamoto evolves the style even more by introducing a 9th style, which plays on Yamamoto's virtue of humility, as Yamamoto is able to listen to others, and thus adapt their own skills and beliefs into his own, thus making himself stronger, while Squallow believes that he's already stronger than everyone else because of his sin of pride, thus he doesn't need to listen or learn anything from any other style other than the one that he already knows. An dichotomy that is perfectly represented just by the way that their fighting styles work here. Just goated. Also, Squallow is just in general the best Varia member, being the closest to a well-realized character out of all of these guys. Like, if he was just a long-haired guy with a sword for an arm, yelled about how much better he is than everyone else, he would be pretty high in the ranking. But they allow him to be a little bit more than that, as seen in a flashback he has with Xanzus, where he promises he won't cut his hair until they achieve Xanzus' goal. Asana Bro, unlike the rest of the group who just seems scared of the guy, actually viewing Xanzus as a friend, and so he cares for it. An additional detail to add to this is that Squallow was supposed to be the boss of the Varia, not Xanzus, showing that Squallow was even willing to put aside his pride to help out Xanzus, which makes it really sad when Xanzus immediately starts laughing like a hyena, when Squallow is eaten by a shark in order to save Yamamoto, who he acknowledges as a worthy swordsman as he dies. Oh yeah, Yamamoto and Squallow's fight took place in like a drowning building with shark-infested water. It's honestly probably my favorite of these battlegrounds for these fights. I think it creates a generally unique atmosphere for the fight, especially in the anime where it developed this nice kind of dark coloring for the fight. Also, it's funny that Squallow dies to a shark, because shark in Italian is Squallow. But yeah, all in all, another banger part of the arc. Let's move on to the next fight and try to see if they can keep up the momentum. For the Mist Guardian, we don't really get to meet them until their fight, with them just being a guy in the hood. But with how he talks about Suna, and the first guy Suna sees before the fight being Ken Chigusa, you can probably get some Mist Guardian is Who is this? Well, apparently the female Mukuro cosplayer over here is named Prom Dokuro, a previously unseen member of the Katekyo gang who has been chosen to become a member of the Mongola. Despite the obvious apprehension due to her connection to Mukuro, and then not even knowing who she is, Suna likes her in the ring, where she puts up a pretty admirable fight against the Varia's misuser, Momon, due to her illusionary powers on par with Mukuro. Still, Momon breaks her staff, and she starts deflating, until a certain voice comes out and the man of the hour, Mukuro, finally arrives. Instead of mentioning how he obviously demolishes Momon, I'll talk about how I like the way they handle Mukuro's return here, as Mukuro doesn't just get to be part of the main cast after what he did in the last arc. The consequences of all the reprehensible stuff he did still sticks, and he gets to stay the same charismatic sociopath that made him fun to watch last arc. Instead, they go this really interesting route, adding a whole new character to the main cast to facilitate Mukuro's reappearances, an action that allows for some greater characterization for Mukuro, as shows he may have a bit of a heart deep down despite what he seems, as he literally only becomes a member of the Mongola in order for Kikusa and Ken to not stay stuck in jail with him and Chrome, or more accurately how it's pronounced Kuromu. It's not just some poor girl he captured, but instead someone he genuinely saved from being abandoned by her legal guardians after an accident which destroyed her organs and eye, with him giving her illusionary organs to replace her old ones, and as a new support group. A support group that only cares about her so that they can see their homie again, but a support group all the same. It also makes him a good contrast to Momon with the whole sin and virtue theme, as Mukuro here represents generosity, which you can probably understand with everything I just said, which contrasts Momon's greed, as he's fighting exclusively in the hope of getting money. Also, his real name is Viper, and he's an Arcobaleno like Reborn and Colonello. He's kind of boring otherwise. The only problem with this fight is the new character herself, Chrome, isn't super interesting outside of adding a few extra steps before when we'll see Mukuro again. Like, she's new and could definitely get better in the next few arcs, but she ain't impressing me so far. Not even to mention the weird stuff they do, like her basically wanting to follow Suna like a wet dog, following her master's command, which isn't exactly a good thing when her other major character trait is Mukuro's devout follower and ethical possession mode. But again, she may improve a bit in the future. Now we gotta go to the penultimate match for the rings and how that became a tragedy. For this fight, we go back to the monster in the body of a 15-year-old known as Habari Kyoya. I didn't really talk about it, but we've seen him in between the other fights as he trains with Dino in the background, which is actually a decent dynamic, as Dino's personality being the rather mature but still super goofy guy mixes really well with Hibari's pure disrespect and lack of care for essentially everything that isn't fighting. A dynamic that allows him to get back to his untouchable status after he basically gets thrown around in the last arc. As Hibari comes into the arena and defeats his Varia counterpart, Golem Mosca, this giant robot dude, in literally a second, get in the cloud ring and wins the battle for the Mongola side. Yes, I can throw away my sin and virtue talk for gluttony and temperance, but it's not as simple as Hibari wins at all. This is where we get into the tragedy part, as after Hibari wins and goes after Xanthus immediately, because he's all about the smoke, Golem Mosca gets up and starts trying to blow up the place, which is where Suna comes back in, having completed his training with Reborn and improved his hyperdying will mode. But even this cool moment has a piece of tragedy to it, as when Suna defeats Golem Mosca, a body comes out. This is due to the fact that, as revealed in a side plot with Imetsu trying to find the Mongola knife, that the Golem Mosca needs the power of the dying will flame to operate, with this Golem Mosca using the knife's dying will flame to power itself. As Xanthus' true plan wasn't to simply just win the battle, but to kill the Knife Mongola boss and thus justify their win as an act of righteous revenge. Mongola Knife also states his reasons for choosing Suna in the first place, which we'll get into more in the next section, but the important thing is that it elevates Suna's want to defeat Xanthus. Yeah, as you can tell, this is definitely more of a setup than a proper fight in its own right, but it's a good setup, as introducing Mongola Knife into the story by having a son use him as a sacrifice to seal his position makes one think about the relationship, which is about to become real important soon. Also, while Hibari definitely got screwed out of his own proper fight, it's still a really cool moment for him to speed blitz a robot. But with all that taken into consideration, let's earn all of this by talking about the final round of the Battle for the Rings. We finally have gotten to the fight we've all been waiting for, Suna versus Xanthus. There's a lot of stuff that happens that isn't the fight though, such as Suna linking up with all the non-fighting homies for the battle, the other Guardians having their little battle in the background, Squallow turning out to have survived getting eaten by a shark, and even Lancia making a reappearance in the last part. But we're not going to cover that in too much depth. Read the manga or watch the anime to experience all of that cool stuff, which you probably have if you've been watching a video like this for as long as the video's been. Also, there's already a lot to cover, just talking about Suna and Xanthus' altercation. Let's get this out of the way first. Xanthus has no actual right to the title of the 10th boss. Despite his whining and the X in his name, he's not the biological heir to the 9th boss, being some poor kid he took off the street due to him being born with a naturally strong version of the dying will flame, an idea which Xanthus internalized for his entire life, making him develop the wild trash very suitable for a mafia boss personality he has now. which makes him a great contrast to Suna, who is actually related to the Mongola bloodline, but was raised in a way that makes him not only unfit to be a mafia boss, but just led to him being a bum in general. One person fit for the role but could never touch it, and another unfit for the role but is predestined for it. It's the true tragedy of this whole thing, as Suna has to grow and learn to respect a role he does not want, while Xanxus continues to destroy everything around him in order to claim a role he built every aspect of his life towards. Suna's kindness contrasts by Xanxus' wrath. Despite this though, Xanxus is not an equal victim in this compared to Suna. Like, yeah, it sucks Timoteo didn't tell Xanxus about his true origins, but at the same time, Xanxus would have just killed him, or bro would have been in a block of ice earlier. Because again, like I stated, Xanxus didn't just become like this because his title was denied to him. He was like this for a while, which goes into the idea of the real reason Suna was chosen over Xanxus in the first place. As Suna's kindness is the thing the family wants, as it reminds them of their original leader, the member of the family Suna is most immediately related to. Something Xanxus, despite Timoteo loving him, regardless, just doesn't have. Instead, being more similar to the person that led the Mongola to the path of violence, that being the second boss. As Suna cries out at the very idea of his friends possibly dying in these matches, Xanxus laughs and gloats about how pathetic they are when they lose. This difference is even represented in their fighting style, as Suna learns the technique invented by the first boss and used the knife known as the 0-point breakthrough, a technique that freezes people, using the power of the flame to restrain and stop, while Xanxus uses technique invented by the second and seventh boss, so this is powerful flame that uses to attack people head on, unlike Suna literally knows the flame of wrath, and twin pistols that he uses to increase the power of the flame through gunpowder, using the power of the flame to maim and kill, a power which actually allowed him to overpower Suna before the ring rejected him, as in the end, he still lost to the fate he tried so hard to go against, putting Suna one step forward towards the path he doesn't want. But hey, he can take a little joy that a person like Xanxus won't get it, at the very least. With all that taken into consideration, I would say the Varia arc is pretty good, showing great improvements from the last arc in terms of fights and storytelling. While I still think Mukuro on his own is a better main antagonist than Varia, the Varia definitely allowed for a lot more to be done in terms of the entirety of the main cast development, rather than just Suna's like last time. I would definitely say my favorite overall fight here is still between the Storm and Rain fight, but none of these fights are outright bad. Even the ones that are more just build up than a proper fight within themselves. Hopefully we can improve even more, as the next arc we have to cover is the future arc, which is a whopping 146 chapters, which doesn't even count the 2 filler arcs I also want to cover, as they both had some involvement by the mangaka Akira Amano, even providing details that would later be introduced in the manga after the future arc. So I might be gone for a while into this series. But until then, the Varia arc was pretty good. This is me, guys, Makova, signing out.